there we go. We're just talking about technical difficulties. Like when I started my podcast, just after, like, I guess, yeah, still pandemic time, 21, for
Sure.
about 4 years ago. Like, I would, for whatever reason, like, I had a lot of, I know I mean, I'm not very tech, or sometimes details escape me, like the chords and the connections and
Right.
the inputs, and but I would have a podcast, and I would like get trying to get set up, a good maybe an hour beforehand, and realize that, like, the mixer's not working,
Yeah.
and I would start sweating. I would be like it would manifest, the anxiety would manifest, like, into, like, and it just throw me off my game, like.
Of course.
And then I wind up having the podcast. I'm sure it went fine, but in my mind, in my eyes, it didn't. It's one of those sort of things. You can, like, almost like you can cure cancer or something like that, but, like, if you're not, like, cool with yourself and your accomplishments, then it's nothing.
Yeah.
um but what I'm saying is I can relate to your, I don't know, I don't see you sweating over there, but, like, I can relate to.
I was getting a little anxious when I couldn't get, I couldn't hear you. But anyway,
Yeah, and it's like, it's tough, like,
I
we
still don't know
haven't.
how I fixed it, but I did.
Yeah, something happened, it resolved itself. um but
Look what I got
Joseph,
today.
what's up? What do you? Oh, a little GP action in the house.
Yeah, yeah, I got a little
That's
GP action,
that's
son.
the seal. That's the seal we're talking about. That's a cool. I like that. I like that color.
Yeah, they gave it to us. They had an alumni event. I guess it was
Yeah,
like about a year ago around this time. And there were
yeah,
about maybe 15 of us from my class. It was just for my class. They took us to dinner over at Tower Oaks Lodge. It was nice. It was good to see everybody. I think they're just trying to, keep connections class by class. Of
yeah.
course, want us to give and
Makes
stuff.
makes
Yeah,
sense.
so it was cool. Oh,
That
absolutely. Yeah.
that's Fran Gormley, correct? Who's the alumni director?
No, there was a guy from class of I think 76 whose
Okay,
name
cool,
escapes me at the moment, who I think was more or less new to the staff in like alumni relations advancement, and he took us
hmm.
to dinner.
Oh, great. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's cool to stay. I mean, you stay pretty connected with some of your prep guys.
Yeah, a
Yeah,
few, off
yeah.
and on. We've had this a guy from the class of 96 who was probably one of my best. I'm 97. He's probably one of my
Hmm.
best friends and brilliant guy. Went to Tufts, went to Harvard Kennedy School, and then about 20 years ago was diagnosed bipolar. And he pops up online, and people reach out to me like, "What's going on?" And I, unfortunately, have to explain to people,
Yeah,
about his mental health. Which at one point, when he was in a better state, he was very public about. Wrote a blog on Huffington Post about it, and so it's not like I'm sharing, government secrets. But so that's unfortunately that's kept me in touch with kind of a random group of guys. But then there's a handful of other guys as well who periodically I'll touch base with. Sometimes I run into people as well in DC, and even out here in Maryland as well. So it's cool.
great.
Yeah,
It's funny that. Well, first of all, let me just say, I can make a quick introduction. So, Joseph Russell Fugett, Fugett,
you had it.
Fugett. Trust yourself, right? Old, like class, not classmate, but we went to prep together. You a few years older than I am. I graduated 2000. You graduated 97.
Yeah,
But came. Where'd you go to college, undergrad?
I went to Trinity College up in Hartford, Connecticut.
Okay, cool. Did
Yeah,
that, and then came back to DC, right? Or
I was in
Baltimore.
Boston for about 10 months. I was in Boston on 9/11, right?
How about that?
That's how I kind of marked time. And then by May of '02, I was back in
Great.
Maryland, back in DC, Maryland. Yep.
Back in the area. Did a good amount of work in Baltimore. Right now, you're hailing from where? Anne Arundel
I'm near
County,
Annapolis, Maryland.
Annapolis, beautiful.
Yeah.
And recently has sort of gotten in. I don't know how recent, but certainly, like, you have a podcast. You have Progress Podcast, and also Progress Coaching, right?
Yes.
And um, and just kind of the coaching piece is just kind of like, I don't know, taken form in the last year or so.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
horrible with these
No,
bios.
you got it.
All right,
You're
cool.
nailing
All
it.
right, cool. All right, cool. Thank you. um, but it's interesting that what you're just talking about, because I was listening to one of your podcasts, one of your recent ones, kind of just like kind of you talking to to the world, wearing a tie, looking spiffy, and then just kind of like putting your thoughts out there, which I thought was really cool. Kind of like raw and
Yeah, it's very raw.
unedited, and you got your
My
daughter
wife hated it.
popping in there. It's endearing though, I think. It's kind of like it's not for everybody, I guess, but like
No,
people like us, maybe I appreciate this like sort of stream of consciousness, vulnerability, that sort of thing.
thank you.
And it's screamed. I mean, one of my favorite quotes is the world kneels before love. It is in awe.
Mm.
Sometimes like, the passerby when they see certain things are like, whoa, that seems to be that person's putting love into the world. And it's like hard to comprehend, and it's just like you just stand there, you're just like kind of in awe of it, just
Yeah.
like you, and it inspires you. Anyway, but yeah, I thank you for doing that. And do you do many of those, like kind of just talking?
Well, it's been interesting. So I started that podcast probably in 2018, Leadership, Legacy, and Love, and I've done it infrequently over the last 7 years. I think the episode you saw was the first one I'd done in almost exactly 2 years.
Yeah,
And so
that that was like late February. It was like February 25th or 6th or something like
it
that.
was like yeah, like 2 weeks ago, right?
Week ago or
So
something. Yeah.
I'm in the process of actually bringing it back. I'm going to be changing the name, so you might see something new up there this week. But posted the video on our My Progress Coach YouTube page, where you can also see the Progress podcast with my wife and I, which we're
Mm-hmm.
working to bring back this spring. So, but for
Mm-hmm.
me, I'm really trying to speak to men, right? I launched
Mm-hmm.
Joesph Coach, Joesph Coaching a couple weeks ago, really seeking to coach men. So it's grateful to hear that, my vulnerable stream of consciousness for 20 minutes was something you enjoyed or found interesting or
Yeah.
helpful,
Yeah.
useful, right? And so certainly going to be, more, there'll be some more of that. And a lot of, what I did was kind of
Yeah.
a mix similar to you. I did a lot of leadership and legacy and love podcast episodes during the pandemic. I interviewed my parents separately. I interviewed different people. I interviewed someone from South Africa who I had done some work with in Cape Town. And so, did a lot of interesting stuff. And then also did a lot of what was just a journal, almost with the idea of it being more a discovery thing for my daughters who are now almost 8 and 11. When they get older, they can go back and kind of listen to some of the lessons I've learned, some of the things I've lived through, and so it'll be some of that. But also, I hope to have some guests. I hope to talk about the core of my framework: marriage, mission, and money, which I think are
Yeah.
three key areas that men, are challenged with, right? And, especially, of those who are married or aspire to be. And then mission, kind of about purpose. What are you trying to do? What did God put me here to do? And then, of course, the financial piece, money, which is key to a lot of things, and how to be really a good steward. And so, doing all that really through a biblical lens, I intend to touch on all those topics. And definitely on a Progress podcast, we've talked about parenting, we've talked about mental health, we've talked about um, addiction. My wife just celebrated 5 years of sobriety from alcohol, and so between the two podcasts, there should be a lot of good stuff if we can just keep going, right? And of course, when you're doing this stuff, and hats off to you, I see how consistent you've been able to be with this platform. That's the challenging part. And so, like I was saying, my wife didn't like how raw that episode was, but I said, I'm just trying to do it. I got to get out here. If I wait to have perfection, I'll never do it. And so,
That's right. That's right.
anyway, my hope is just to keep sharing, and I'll find my people, and the people I'm meant to serve. Hopefully, will find me.
Yeah, amen, brother. I think that
Yeah.
with that sort of that riff that you did, um, it's yeah, it's raw. But the more you do raw things, the more they turn into like they refine themselves. If
Yeah,
you
that's what
like
people want.
if you like talking sometimes, just to, not a monologue, but just like kind of talking to the camera or whatever.
Yeah,
If you enjoyed it, do it again, and it'll get quote better.
exactly.
Whatever better is.
Yeah,
But it's I think it's what you've sort of been saying, but if it sort of like tickles or touches your soul, you can't ignore it. And
exactly.
you gotta do it, and you gotta keep keep doing it. It's the hardest sort of thing. Thank you for that little shout out about this podcast, but I certainly like you and like probably lots of people out there. I struggle with the consistency.
Right.
Consistency is one of the hardest things to live out. And like I got 100 and 183 episodes over 4 years, but like there's periods like I didn't do anything. January and most all February, I didn't do anything, you know. And it's
Okay,
good.
sure.
It's good to unplug, you know. But like,
Yeah,
it wasn't an intentional unplug. It was more like I didn't. I went through a little period, you know. Like I didn't feel like put myself out there. I didn't feel all the way confident in my art, my craft, you know. And
sure.
and yeah, I had a thing. But now I'm being more. I'm kind of like I'm doubling down on it.
I
You know,
mean,
I'm back
45
into it.
episodes a year on average is plenty. So let me commend
Yeah,
you.
yeah, 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 yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
right? Think
Thank
about
you.
that.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
so
Thank you.
taking 7 or 8 weeks off a year is, at a minimum, I would say is
I
not a
hear you,
bad
bro.
thing, right?
No, I hear
You
you.
know?
Thanks
Yeah,
for
yeah.
that,
And I'm sure
man.
you've had
Yeah,
weeks where you've
perspective,
done two or
baby.
three episodes and stacked it, and so
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah.
I hear you. So the what was I gonna say? Yeah. So when I was listening to your that one-on-one sort of episode you put out, and I was like kind of like getting ready, showering, brushing my hair, and like it clicked on over to the YouTube to the next one, and the next one was I don't know how that who knows how the algorithms work, right? But like the next one it brought up was with you and your wife talking
Yep.
about it was from I think October, um,
Sure.
and you were talking about your buddy for prep, about
Okay.
his bipolar, and
Yeah. Yeah.
hoping to reconnect with the guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
He yeah, and it's interesting that you brought we started with that and you brought that up. You know, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Um, is he doing better or is he
Hasn't
have
been
you
doing great
have you heard from him? Okay,
um the
because
last
you
five
said
years.
multiple times you've been trying to be that bridge. It seems to me, right, to like reach out and like try to help, offer your
Yeah.
assistance. You know, offer your friendship, your love, and your expertise. Um, but that's all you can
Yeah.
do. Well,
And
that's
yeah,
all
I
you can
say
do.
I say that very humbly because, when things so, he would post a lot of crazy things on social media and people would, reach out to me because of that. And,
Yeah,
it's a blessing to know that people knew I was like his best friend. And so people would reach out to me first to ask what's going
yeah.
on. Do you know what's going on? And quite literally for 20 years, that's been the journey, off and on with him. Sometimes it's been quite intense. And so, but unfortunately, I haven't been able to save him, right, so to speak, right, get him
Hmm,
the
hmm.
the permanent help that he needs, and particularly in the last 6 years since 2019. He had a good stretch for a while, but 2019, things seemed to go the wrong way, and then his father passed away, I think, towards the end of the pandemic, 2020, 2021.
Yeah.
And that seemed to really make things worse and also kind of disconnect from another potential for support for him. And so he doesn't have a whole lot of family support. And because it's been so protracted, over 2 decades of him with this illness, um, it's been very difficult for him to get the help that he needs. You can't, in most states, I think almost in every state, you can't force someone to go to the ER or to commit themselves, so to speak, to get the treatment they need. And so, from what I understand, he's doing okay. He still pops up, on social
Yeah.
media with very random things. Occasionally, he sends these diatribe emails out and stuff. And so,
Yeah.
and I was really engaged intensely in 2020, 2021, 2022, trying to get him help. Was unsuccessful. He was actually here in Maryland for a while. He was in jail for a while, and so,
Hmm.
I was trying to get over to see him, between like when the visiting hours were and like my schedule, and even if it was even possible legally because I wasn't a family member, like it never quite came together before he apparently got released. And I think now he's back down in the Atlanta area from what I understand. And so, it's just been tough. He's one of those type of people who people thought he was going to be like the next, Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey.
Yeah.
He's one of the things, like if he was in good health, you feel like my life and life of a lot of the people could be a lot better just because we know him and we're around him. And so
Yeah.
it's in a number of ways it's been very sad and challenging, but it's also been, an education in mental health, for me in terms of my mental health, but also in terms of being able to be a coach, a friend and advisor to other people, particularly other men who struggle with their mental health. And so I can speak from a deep well of experience, because of what I've gone through with my friend over the last 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's
the
brutal.
podcast is a chance for me to share that. And so I'm grateful you found it. I hope more people find it. And that's why I just feel called to keep talking, and keep going with what I'm doing.
It said that yeah, um it said that in the sort of like your sort of mission statement or video that you put out about your podcast, um, Progress Podcast, correct?
Yeah.
Well, you have two, right? Progress Podcast, or the one with your wife.
Yeah, the Progress podcast is my wife and I, right?
Okay,
And then,
got it.
I had Leadership, Legacy, and Love, which I'm actually going to be
Leadership,
rebranding, but
leadership, legacy, love. Cool,
yeah, yeah, but I'm actually coming back. It's going to be Marriage, Mission, Money, pretty in the coming days. So,
great.
yeah.
Um,
Um,
but in the coaching, you had some posts about kind of like summing up your sort of yeah, your sort of mission statement or your philosophy
yeah.
with respect to coaching. And it says like you got back to the basics maybe of you tapped into your true gifts of communication, coaching, and leadership. Um,
Yeah.
did you feel at some point you lost sight of those talents or along the course of your
Mm,
life or your professional journey? Um, yeah.
perhaps. Certainly, and I've talked about this a lot. I've I'm the nephew of what many people consider to be the first African American billionaire.
Hmm.
My late uncle Reginald F. Lewis, who passed away in January of 1993, and definitely felt
Let
a
me hold on.
responsibility.
Let me just hold on. Sorry. Let me just pause
Yeah,
this. Let
yeah.
me get my dog out of here.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's sabotaged many podcasts in the past. Yeah. So you're saying, yeah, your uncle, maybe the
Yeah, my,
first
my late uncle,
black billionaire.
yeah, Reginald F. Lewis. So it's interesting. Right, the January before I came to prep, we went to high school. You and I went to high school together. He passed away, and that really shifted my life greatly. And so for a long period of time, I really spent a lot of time in the finance world, kind of like an insider, but an outsider, right? Like I didn't go the traditional route in terms of like going to B school, although I did get a business degree from GW here in DC.
Hmm. Hmm.
I did some stuff with my dad for a while. At one point, we were working with Dan Duquette, who was the former GM of the Baltimore Orioles. Before he got that job, he was actually president of my company, Fugett Baseball Group, and we were working to acquire minor league baseball teams. We had a number of teams under contract at various points, and one of our partners got sick and later passed away from brain cancer. And then Dan left, and that kind of was the end of that. And so I pivoted into the digital space. But really, my heart was to figure out how to do acquisition. My uncle was able to be successful by acquiring one of the three largest food companies in the world back in 1987 for almost $1 billion. And so that was the model I wanted to replicate. And so I think in some ways, by being so focused on that, I did lose my way in terms of leveraging my gifts, right? I'm not my uncle, right? My uncle went to Harvard Law School. I'm not a lawyer. I think as I, reflect on him, he passed, I was 13 years old, but as I, he has an autobiography called Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? You want to get it on Amazon. And
Yeah.
if you want to learn more about him, and there's a lot of stuff on YouTube and various things. And there's an exhibit here in Baltimore for the next 14 months that you can check out at the African American History Museum, which happens to also bear his name in downtown Baltimore. But I'm a very different person. I think I have different skill sets, different gifts. And so I think what I've had to really figure out, really coming out of the last 5 years, 6 years, and since COVID, even before that, really, was what are my gifts, right? What is for me? What has God called me to do as a person who's a believer in Jesus Christ? Like, okay, God, like you've given me this great legacy. I have a wonderful family legacy, even beyond my uncle. A lot of great experiences, a great network, a great education, of course, but what do I do with it? How do I serve others at the highest level? And so that's really what I've pivoted to, and that's been certainly a heart posture, a heart journey, and also a mental, journey for me as well to really figure out, okay, what do I bring that's unique that can be a blessing to others? And that's where, you can find professional success and personal success and fulfillment by finding, figuring out where that intersection lies. And so I'm still very much on that journey, but getting increasing clarity. Last year starting coaching, my wife and I really are able to not just be great as a married couple, but also able to work together very well in the marketplace, and we're doing that in real time. And also being able to be a model both in marriage and coaching couples in marriage. And then also, my wife coaches a lot of women, and I'm working and coaching more and more men who are going through challenges that somehow intersect with the marriage, mission, and money framework I've developed and have begun writing a book on that will be out later this year. And so that's really been the journey. It's some ways I recognize it's somewhat unique in some ways because I have all this family history and legacy that I could go on about for a long time. I won't do that right now, but also it's not unique because I think most men have similar challenges, whether it's with mental health, whether it's with figuring out marriage or wanting to be married and how to pick the right spouse. Of course, figuring out purpose and mission professionally, or even personally in your in terms of how you serve and how you show up in your community and your place of worship. And then of course, how do you steward your finances and money, right, to leave legacy, and to really be able to have impact. And so that's where I'm leaning in, and again bringing back my podcast, my content. My wife and I will certainly pick up the pace with our podcast pretty soon here. And but that's been the shift for me. And that's still very much an ongoing shift.
Yeah. The before you, let's say about a year or so ago, is it that you lost your job or you stepped away from your job that you had for a long time, correct?
Well, I was at 2019. I was at a consulting firm, and like many people, got let go during COVID. Right, like
So there's
they
okay, my bad. This is COVID
yeah.
times.
Yeah, so a
Consulting.
lot of that. Then I launched. I kind of relaunched my business. I've had my company and incorporated since 2013. So I think my company's 12 years old, but I've probably been through like four different iterations of terms of actually what the business actually does and how I've generated
Uh-huh.
revenue.
Uh-huh.
So coming back out of COVID, I kind of resuscitated that and ended up pivoting into Joomla Network, following a trade name, which was a strategic consultancy focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And had done some great work in 2022, was doing really well, and then the bottom kind of fell out heading into 2023. And I lost my grandmother, who was like a second mother to me, and she was 97 years old, and she had been ill for a while, but it was very sudden. I didn't think I realized the impact she had on my life until she was gone. Then later that year, I also lost my uncle, who was the patriarch on my mother's side of the family as well. And so both of my family units were kind of had a big shift, right? And it was just
Yeah.
a lot to process in real time. And then January of 24, my mother-in-law passed away very suddenly, and then my wife came back from bereavement leave two weeks to the day later, and was laid off from her corporate job at a large dental company that was backed by Google. And so within 12 months, we had three deaths in the family. I pretty much shut down my consulting practice, and my wife lost her job. And it was a dark time, right? So it's certainly been a journey these last now 24 months for me and my wife and my family, to kind of rediscover, okay, what has God called us to do as a family? What has God called my wife and I to do as a couple? And how do we show up, in our marriage? How do we show up in ministry, and how do we show up in the marketplace? And that's really what my progress coach, myprogresscoach.com. You'll kind of can read our short bio. That's really who we are, and we're literally just kind of in the early stages of walking into what that is going to mean for us and for our children and our family going forward. And so it's a journey, and it's still in process in real time.
Amen, bro. Yeah, on that interesting on that podcast with you and your wife in October, she was talking a little bit about how you went through a kind of a dark period
Yeah.
in the last maybe 24 months or with all these sort of traumatic life events happening kind of in a condensed or short amount of time.
Yeah.
And she's like, I kind of, she's worried about you. She worries about you. It's not like she lives somewhere else. Like you see her every day. You sleep in the same bed. You live in the same
Right.
house,
Yes.
and then she's still worried
Yeah.
about you, and you're in their presence with her. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
some serious worry. When you're having dinner together. It's not like you're
Right.
across the country. But how did you work through that? How did you work through that?
Certainly I think there's a few things. One, obviously a lot of prayer,
Yeah.
leaning into my Bible. In 2024 I read the whole Bible in a year, and I finished on January 1st of this year. So I took an extra day to get through Revelation, which is kind of interesting,
Leap
right?
day, boy.
You know,
Yeah.
but also I think I leaned into finding community, right? To finding a few guys I could be vulnerable with and who could be vulnerable with me to talk, right? To share our struggles with life, with mental health, with marriage, with parenting, right? With career. And so certainly being a resource, but also being able to find other people who could be a resource for me in that regard as well. And then getting back into therapy has been huge for me as well. I had kind of I gotten out of going having therapy and having someone professional to talk to, and I've been so focused. I had a therapist tell me I have an overly strong sense of responsibility. So
Yeah.
in other words, I was more focused on my kids and my wife, and I would always put myself last. But obviously, if I'm not in good health, whether mentally, physically, spiritually, or my soul, I'm not going to be useful to my wife and children. So I really had to learn to prioritize myself, and had to learn how to even be vulnerable with my wife to get her support, which of course I've had. to be able to put myself first. And so it's it's been a shift. So far this year has been really great. First 2 months of the year in that
Great,
regard. And like I
great.
said, we're in the very early stages. I think of what we're believing God's going to do for us and through us to be a blessing to others. And that's really our heart's desire. And so again, we're finding the courage to take the next step to move into that, and it's just one step at a time. God doesn't give you the end scene. You guys got to take the next step, and so that's the faith walk that we're trying to live out every day.
Amen.
Yeah.
Was there was there like a point, or has have you always been with God, or have you let him go at certain periods of your life? It seems like with this yeah, with your three M's, um marriage, mission, money, manhood, you
Yeah,
threw
yeah.
a fourth in there.
Yeah, I thought about marriage, manhood, because everybody's
Yeah,
not married, right? And I
yeah,
want to be
yeah.
able to speak to my
The
single brothers too.
Amen. Amen. But
Yeah,
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 I mean, we can get into manhood for a long time. But like, was there a point where God wasn't number one in your life? It seems like you tap when things are, you've heard the footsteps in the sand poem, right? When there's like two footsteps,
and then the poster.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then like there's
yeah.
one
I thought those
footstep
were my
there.
footsteps, but God was those were really God's because He was carrying me.
Correct, correct.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
seen that one.
God, you get to know God really well when times are not great. Um,
Yeah,
and which, that's what God's for. He carries you.
yeah.
But was there a time when, yeah, that God wasn't necessarily, as an important a role in your life than he is now?
Yeah, I was going to say to when you I think your very first iteration of the question, I was going to answer and say God, never. I might have left God, but God never left me,
Right, right, right.
and that's really been as I look back, over my lifetime. That's what I see the evidence of, and when things are hard in the present, I have to remember the past and how God has sustained me and brought me through, and kept me safe when I was, doing things I shouldn't have done,
Yeah.
being places I probably shouldn't have been, right?
Hmm.
And living in a way that wasn't honoring to him.
Hmm.
And so that's definitely, what I recognized. And so again, how do you lean into that
Hmm.
reality in this season and examine yourself to find ways that you need to improve where how do you handle learning how to handle my own challenges as a man, as a human. We all have them, right? We all have there's a thorn in our side, so to speak, that we all have to manage or perhaps live with, right? Or learn how to steward. And but also learning how to do that in a way that is honoring to God and also can help encourage other people to do the same. Life's not certainly not easy, but we do have a loving father, a loving creator who's available to us, and can help us get through. And so that's really, the kind of the mind, the shift that I've had to make. And even going back to thinking about business and career and my uncle is learning I can't do it in my own strength, right? Really learning how to rely on faith, and not having all the answers, not being able to be in control of all the details, all the moving parts, but really having faith to just do the next thing that I know to do, day by day, right? God promises, give us this day our daily bread, right? We're not promised tomorrow. So what can I do today? And trying to stay present. Of course, we have an eye on the future, but living in the present without having anxiety for the future, and then not having worry or depression because things didn't work out in the past. And that's really the mindset, through prayer daily, through reading my Bible daily, try to stay present and grounded. And then what can I do today to serve someone at a higher level and to be the best husband and father I can be? And that's, again, to keep it simple, try to make that the focus. So that's really been the journey
Yeah.
and the process,
It's a,
certainly since in the last 25 years or so.
yeah. I would think it's that would probably help you, um, to sort of detach from sort of the heap of responsibility that you put on yourself,
Yeah.
is to like to put it in God's hands, to an
Yeah.
extent. You know what I'm saying? It's
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
it's what's the right word? I don't know. It's exhausting, if when try to take everything on your own,
Yeah.
but and when you can just kind of like let God carry the burden, some of it,
Yeah.
it frees you
And that's
up.
where I
It frees
was.
you up.
That's where I was. Yeah. I had exhausted myself. I had exhausted my wife. I was in 2018, I had like a 8-figure business under contract. I've, on these crazy calls negotiating. I flew to California and back within 26 hours to negotiate a deal. It was,
Going hard.
it was hard. I
You're
borrowed
going hard.
money.
You're going hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I had borrowed money to do it, like to try to get, mezzanine financing just to get to the finish line on the acquisition. And like, I really exhausted her. I exhausted myself. She was at the time still struggling with alcoholism, which I hadn't at the time quite identified. And so it was a lot, right? So we've been through a lot together. We've grown together, her and I. But definitely, I think, she might have exhausted me a little bit, but I know I definitely
Hmm.
exhausted her. And so,
Yeah.
like I said, it's been a journey. It's
Yeah.
been a journey. So we're blessed to be able to be here and be in good health, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, to be able to share it on the Progress Podcast, and for me to be, able to share it, mission, marriage, and money. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Did you find yourself like your uncle very successful? Obviously, your dad
yeah,
played in the NFL, right? And also, he
yeah.
was a lawyer. Is he a lawyer? Is that
He was
right?
a lawyer. He was right
Yeah.
there with my uncle for a lot of what he accomplished after my dad retired, and was with my uncle quite a lot. My dad also was a lawyer. Went to law school at night. He left the Cowboys and came to the then known as the Washington Redskins, and
Yeah.
went to GW Law School at night, and then went and met John Riggins at the bar afterwards, is what he would say. And so, and then once he finished law school and he retired in, like, 80, 81, he went to work with my uncle, and also had a very large law firm in Baltimore at one point. I think had like 8 lawyers working for him. And then my uncle passed away in 93. My father took over the company and moved to Paris, and ran it for about 18 months. So, yeah, I mean, that's definitely, kind of been a part of the journey, is living through that.
Hmm. Yeah. Have you? I mean, that's it can be a lot to live up to, if you view it like that. Sometimes it's hard. I mean, my dad was very successful in business.
Okay.
I chose a different route. I think for a while it's like, you kind of feel that you need to go, or you're supposed to go in the footsteps of your
Right.
father,
Supposed to.
or
Yeah.
yeah, exactly right.
Hmm.
That's just a convenient thing. It makes sense on paper, but we're not paper. We're not origami.
Way more
So yeah,
complex.
exactly. The human heart's not is far from paper. um, and uh, and it can be hard, especially for sensitive people. I say sensitive in the greatest sort of way, like just like feelers, that like pick up things, what's going on around you. Pick up, yeah, like empath when you use that word,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. My oldest daughter is a super empath, and so she's
yeah,
very keen on everybody's
take
emotions.
stuff on. It's a blessing or a curse, or
Yeah.
it can cut both ways. It just can weigh on you. But like, I guess, good for you for finding Joseph Russell's path.
There you go.
It might have taken some time or whatever, but it's better late than never. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Ain't young, it ain't you ain't old. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I was listening to a great sermon this morning as I was taking my kids to school. I haven't listened to the whole thing, but he was saying that God is the God of the detour. And we may complain about the detour, we may hate the detour, but the detour is about building something in us, right? That if we just took us straight to the promised land, so to speak, we wouldn't be ready to sustain it, right? When we get
Hmm.
to whatever
Hmm.
our promised land is, whether it's in our business life, whether it's in our personal life, right? We
Hmm.
want to be able to sustain it. We don't want to just be a flash in the pan or a comet streaking across the sky and 15 minutes
Yeah.
of fame, so to speak, right? We want to be able to sustain what God's trying to give to us, right? And we want to be able to
Yeah.
sustain what, even more important, we want to be able to sustain what God's trying to put in us, and be able
Hmm.
to reflect that to the world for God's purposes. And so, therefore, we have to go through the detour. And because I feel like
Hmm.
I've been on a 20-year detour in a lot of ways, and
Hmm.
I'm hoping the detour is coming to an end. And I feel
Hmm.
like I'm more aligned than ever with what God's attempting to do in my life and in my marriage and my family. But you have to recognize God's a God of the detour. So it's not so much about the destination. It's, okay, God, who are you making me to be? Who do you want me to be? And in the process, hopefully discovering what the impact and implications of that are for the rest of my life. And so that's the journey, right? That's the journey for until we take our last breath. That's truly the journey.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
Another one of those words that's hard is patience. I guess
Oh,
patience and consistency can be intertwined. The old Venn
certainly.
diagram. There's a fat football in the middle. But like, yeah, it's hard. It's because especially now, everyone kind of wants it yesterday. You want the thing like now or even
Well, of
quicker than
course.
you know. And it's
Yeah.
like, and you see the success of people, but you don't. It's like the analogy of like the duck that's above the surface that looks like picturesque. It looks
Right.
beautiful and it looks like it's so serene and everything. But
Um,
underneath
yeah.
the surface, that the thing that those legs are paddling, they're about ready to fall off. There's
Right.
a lot of hard work that obviously people don't see that gets people to the top of the mountain that you want to be on. And that's it's just like anything else. Like it takes a long time to climb a mountain.
Yeah.
So, and it's like that can be the detour. I want to go to the top of the mountain, but now I got to go to these switchbacks that take you sideways and stuff like that.
Right. Yep.
And it's taking you away from like the quite literally, it's taking you away from the summit, but and you need to go sideways sometimes. It's like football. Sometimes you got to sidestep someone in order to get to the end zone. you know?
Right. Well, you're learning
Uh,
a new skill, right?
yeah,
While you're going sideways. That's going to help you
yeah,
when you get to the next level. You can't, but you don't know what's up there, right? If you're
yeah,
using this metaphor, but you're
yeah,
learning something. Like, why am I still going sideways? Because you got to
yeah.
learn, you have to build a new muscle. You have to
Hmm.
learn a new reflex. You have to learn a new skill. You have to strengthen your faith. So when you get to
Yeah,
the next step, it'll become second nature to do what's needed to be done so you don't fall
yeah.
off the side of the mountain.
Amen. Amen. Don't want to fall into the
So yeah,
void. Don't fall into the void.
don't fall. Right. Do not
Yeah.
fall. Do not
The
fall.
so your faith is it like so Georgetown Prep, Jesuit, Catholic, do you
Yeah.
still align that direction or is your faith taking a different sort of manifestation or yeah.
Yeah, I was certainly raised Catholic, and certainly prep in Men for Others is still very much foundational. Right, so I'm talking about Joesph coaching Men for Others, right? But certainly don't consider myself Catholic.
Yeah.
I currently attend a non-denominational church, and I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, so it's certainly different than religion. A lot of people have
Yeah.
religion, have cultural practices or religious practices they do on a regular basis or a weekly basis, and certainly, of course, there are routines and some ritual that's always involved. And I've been able to
Yeah.
blessed to travel the world and attend churches in different countries and recognize that people experience Christ and their faith in Christ differently in different cultures and different environments in different places in the world. And so, that's why I say my challenge every day is to get in my Bible every day, to spend time in prayer every day, to lead
Yeah.
my children and my wife in that way, and to model that for them as well. My children in particular, of course.
Yeah.
My wife does an excellent job. Some days and weeks better than me at modeling it, but together we try to be really intentional about it. And so, yeah, that's my faith. But certainly, my family, my father's side was all Catholic. I have two papal medal winners in my family. So we've been in Baltimore, continue to be very connected to the Catholic Church. I think one of my great aunts is on the board of I think the Cristo Rey Academy in Baltimore.
Yeah.
So, I had a chance to go back to prep a couple years ago and speak at the convocation 2 Januaries ago. And so, certainly have strong Catholic ties and Catholic roots. And my family's been,
Yeah.
big supporters of the Catholic Church in Baltimore in particular. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's very very multi-layered faith journey and exposure to the Christian faith, in that way throughout my life. Right, that's always been a through
Yeah.
line, certainly.
So your like byline or your birth name is Joseph Russell, correct? Or is that right?
Correct. I've always been known as Russell. So yeah, my first name is Joseph, and that's why the irony of kind of going to Joseph Coach and thinking about the different Josephs in the Bible and the critical role they each played. But yes, my name is Joseph Russell Fugett, but there's a lot of Josephs in my family. So my mother said I like Russell better. So I've always been known as Russell.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The Joseph. Well, first off, Joseph Coach. It's got a nice ring. It rhymes. And Coach Joseph. Um, uh, Also, I mean, personally, the Joseph story is one of my favorite stories from the Bible, from the Old Testament. It's
Okay. Yes, me too.
it's
Genesis.
un
Yes.
it's
Okay.
un
Well, so which
from
Joseph do
Genesis.
you like?
What do you mean?
But
When he gets sold in
Genesis
this?
Joseph.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I meant. Yeah, the Genesis
Yeah. Yeah.
Joseph. That's what I was referring to. It's such a cool
Yeah.
story. It's
It
such a cool
is.
story. Getting
Yeah.
sold into slavery. Basically, his brothers were jealous of him. I think right. He's one of
Yeah.
11, and then they become the tribes. I think right. They get sold
Yeah.
into slavery, and then he like wins
Mhm.
the affection of the pharaoh by interpreting the dreams and everything.
Yep. He gets out of
Um,
yeah. Yep.
and he becomes like way high up there. It's such a cool story.
Yeah.
So I like, and because of that, I've always sort of like the name Joseph. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but
And then
you,
you got the two Josephs, and there's two, and then there's two Josephs in the gospel, right? Of course, Joseph with
yeah,
with Mary, right? And try to imagine
yeah, the
being a
father,
husband and a father
yeah,
to a son that's not yours, but is the savior of the world, right? And
yeah,
then when Joseph was crucified, you had a very wealthy man named Joseph who actually went and purchased Jesus's remains and purchased them, if I'm not mistaken, and also paid for them to be entombed, right?
yeah,
And so that Joseph also played a very interesting role in terms of the leading up to the resurrection.
yeah,
So, and I think there's a couple other Josephs in the New Testament as well that help spread the gospel. So I think there's five Josephs in the Bible, if I'm not mistaken. But
yeah.
certainly the Genesis Joseph and then the two Josephs in the Gospels are the ones I think about the most as
Hmm.
being, you have this wealthy person who you must assume if he was wealthy, he was a business person. Then you had the husband and the father and the carpenter who taught Jesus how to be a carpenter, Joseph. And then, of course, you have Joseph in the Old Testament who was put in the pit, eventually sold into slavery. His brothers and father thought he would have been killed, and then ends up being able to resurrect, so to speak, his family by saving his family during the time of famine, because he ended up given control of the province from Pharaoh, right after having been imprisoned by Pharaoh unjustly because because Pharaoh's wife tried to sleep with him, and he ran away but left his robe and he ended up in jail. And then he said interpreted the dream. So there's a lot of beautiful stories in Joseph, and I think there's so many lessons. And again, I intend to probably get into some of those in my podcast and talk a little more deeply
Hmm.
and make some of the connections that and some of the takeaways we can take as men in this season that can be valuable for us. And so
Yeah,
you got it. You absolutely.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
a lot to live up to in the name
There's a
Joseph.
there's a lot there.
But like, it's
Yeah.
interesting that like, I think I might know what you're going to say, but which Josephs do you identify with? But I would almost think that like they almost kind of can be all the same person, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
you kind of tap into the one, or you can identify with the one, with depending on the season of life that you might be in.
I've definitely thought about more of the Genesis Joseph, certainly.
Hmm.
Um,
It's a cool story. It's a
in
cool
part of that,
story.
yeah, in part that's because I have such a vision. I've always had a vision, going back to my uncle's story of my uncle said he passed away. He was only 50 years old when he died in 1993. And it was, of course, because he was the oldest of the kids and that side of my family. He's my dad's older brother. And because he had had such amazing historic success in business and in finance and on Wall Street, it was devastating and extremely disruptive to our family. And it was extremely devastating and disruptive to my life. So for me, I've always, felt there's a couple of things. One, always, had a heart and a desire to kind of redeem, so to speak, my family and kind of go back. And I don't know if that was always the healthiest thought, so to speak, or healthiest ambition in a sense, like trying to put success as a redemptive quality as opposed to looking to God to redeem. But the other part of that that's I think that was interesting is really thinking about. I sorry, I lost my train of thought.
It's all
Um,
good. It's all good.
yeah,
Um, the
come back to me.
it will. So you so in 2013, that's when you sort of you started your company, correct? And it is a
Yeah,
as
I
it
incorporated this company in 2013. Yep.
has it always been sort of like a consulting, as a having taking a consulting slant to it, or
Yeah, always,
direction?
yeah, to summarize, initially it was kind of in the digital space
Mm.
where I was really focusing on digital transformation. I've done social media marketing, website development, and that's most of what it's been in various iterations. I had a software development startup at one point for a couple of years as well. We couldn't get funding and market penetration in a timely manner to be able to make it viable.
Hmm.
Um, could have been interesting, but
Hmm.
didn't find a niche. We had interesting software, but we weren't good at finding a market niche to meet a critical need, and that's certainly key. And so, but then, like I said, more recently, I kind of have focused more on the consulting space, doing assessments, doing training, doing strategic planning, and still do tangentially do some of that work, just kind of in a different space now. So my wife and I are more working in operations in different businesses, and consulting and advising there as well. And so I continue to do instructor led training where I almost exclusively on Zoom, uh, will deliver courses. I'm actually developing a course right now. I'll be launching in the next couple of weeks. That's going to be a kind of a back to work course for the federal employees who are being let go in mass right now in the federal government. And so I've done some of this work over the last couple of years, workforce development, but kind of functionally, tactically workforce development from like looking at real estate acquisitions to programmatic development and deployment. But I've also done a course where I've helped people transition to work into remote work. So I've formed a partnership with the company that has that curriculum. I'm going to make some tweaks, but I'm going to basically be creating an asynchronous course and also building a little bit of a community element as well and a coaching element as well for people who are in the federal workspace who are really, who have lost their employment, and I'm sure many of which are scared and concerned and trying to figure out what their next move is going to be. I'm hoping that the course will be a blessing for them, and also to the extent that we do like weekly coaching calls and have some community elements as well that can be helpful. People can get connected to resources and opportunity and pivot to their next career move. And so, very broadly, that's been the genesis. Like I said, there's been a couple other M&A in there. There was. I was doing some stuff in digital advertising. I had a couple acquisition opportunities in that space that didn't work out as well. And so was also looking at one point buying a series of office buildings in Baltimore to do some stuff in, but that didn't work out. And so I've always had these very interesting acquisition opportunities and things under contract, but for various reasons wasn't able to get home on closing.
Hmm.
And so anyway, that's been the kind of the arc of my company for the last 12 years.
Yeah, you're described on one of the a news piece as a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah, I've eaten a lot of cereal because I couldn't afford anything else sometimes. That's
Somebody
why I
got to
tell people when they
eat
laugh,
cereal in order to become an entrepreneur.
yeah, I've eaten
Yeah,
a lot of cereal. I've had to live on cornflakes.
yeah, 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 yeah,
I let my daughters eat steak, but I'll just eat, I'll heat up leftovers and I'll make them a steak. They're
yeah,
so spoiled.
yeah. They're the ones that need to grow big and strong like you.
Yeah,
Um,
they are. They are growing
I,
like weeds.
I believe it. The So now it's called Joomla, right? Joomla
Well, yeah.
Network.
So yeah, I filed for the trade name, I guess, in late 2020 or 2021 for Joomla Network.
Joomla.
And
Okay.
that was the iteration of the business strategic consultancy and knowledge network focused on diversity and inclusion. That's kind of I kind of shut that down in mid 2023.
Hmm.
But certainly still kind of operate out of that that email address. And if you go to
Yeah.
joomlanetwork.com now, it's going to point you to My Progress Coach. And
Okay, great.
so
Okay, great.
and
So,
that's really how we're moving out now is under My Progress Coach, and that's where you'll find our course. That's where you'll find my Joesph coaching program. If you want to, if any men who are in your audience want to sign up, it's a
yeah,
short application. Then we'll talk on a Zoom and decide how to move forward. So you can find all that. You can find the Progress Podcast on myprogresscoach.com as well. So that's the umbrella that we're under now. But
yeah, great.
functionally, it's the same company, just a different brand,
I love
different,
it.
a little bit different mission, different
I
call
love
right
it.
now. And so, yeah.
I love it. Yeah. So my progress coach, um, and like again the whole like in the mission there are these series of M's, right? Marriage, mission, money,
Yeah.
manhood, and it seemed to me that um, in some of your videos, what I've picked up is like you sense a need for stewardship. Is that the word you use?
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah. How to
need
be a good steward.
yeah, there's a need for a men might there might be a need for yeah, men needing help with those sort of things, direction and marriage and mission and money, and so you sense that there's a demand for that.
Yes. Yeah, I
How's
do.
how so?
And that's just from the conversations I have with men where I lead a Wednesday morning 6 a.m. prayer call on Zoom. And I just have a number of men who, mostly through my church community that I interact with, um, and counsel and advise. And some of them obviously do the same for me, right? It's kind of people who are maybe younger than me or earlier in their marriage than me. I help, and then there's people who are older than me who pour into me, and so that's really the model. But again, believing there's men who need that to see how vulnerability is modeled, who need accountability. That's something I think I've struggled with is, especially being an entrepreneur, who are you accountable to? right? Who's going to tell you your blind spots? Who's going to tell you when you need to improve in a certain area, right? And get into, break habits or patterns that might be causing you to fall short of your goals. And so I think men need that, right? I think men need it from other men. You can't rely on your spouse. I think it's not reasonable or realistic to rely on your spouse to hold you accountable in
Yeah.
certain ways, right? And so I definitely have identified there's a need, certainly around discussing mental health, and certainly around even discussing finances, right? A lot of us in terms of stewardship of our finances are not doing great. And I speak from experience myself. Like I said, I've definitely overextended my family trying to pursue my entrepreneurial desires, and so I know, what it's like. And for the first half of my marriage, money was an argument, pretty frequently. And so, how do you navigate that? So, I use the word stewardship because for so long my wife and I would have a conversation. We're going to talk about bills tomorrow, right? We're going to talk about bills. And I was praying about it. I said, no, we need to stop thinking about it from the stand of who we owe money to. And these are our bills. We need to think about it from the standpoint of what has God given us to steward in our finances. And of course, you can start there, but then you think about, okay, God's given us finances to steward, but He's also given us other assets to steward as well. Of course, there's assets like our home, right, and other physical assets. But then there's also our children. There's also, our own health and body and our well-being, which if we don't have that, we can't, do anything, right? We can't serve anybody. We certainly can't make income, right? And so really thinking, shifting our perspective on how do we steward what God's given us comprehensively. And so that just shifted the whole tone of our conversation around our financial outlook, around paying our bills, to say, how do we, obviously have a good financial strategy for ourselves, but then also how do we steward everything? How do we take time to really be intentional about discussing and having a plan and a strategy, through prayer and through God's wisdom and discernment, to have a strategy and a plan for our children, for all of our assets, both physical, but also spiritual, mental, emotional, et cetera. How are we taking care of ourselves? Are we keeping up with our doctor's appointments? And all these things. And so just being able to shift the focus and the conversation. And it's been a life changer. It's been a change for the tone in my marriage. And so that's the kind of life lesson I want to be able to help other men, coach them into living
Hmm.
into, because it makes a huge difference. And as our kids get older, they feel it and they see it too. And it's impacting them and what their expectation is going to be for when they're married or when they're adults, right? And so thinking about that generationally, it's just huge. And we obviously don't know what the future holds, but we're believing that by learning these things now, by modeling it for our children and for them to be able to see a little bit of it and even just feel it, it'll impact them positively for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean,
Yeah.
there's nothing like experiential learning. I don't think
Yeah.
like and just like the importance of the role modeling what it means to be a man, or role modeling what it means to be a woman, or role modeling
Yeah.
just like living what it means to be a father or a mother,
Yeah. Yeah.
because their kids are what I've noticed with kids and such, is that they're always watching everything, you know,
Yes.
which is
Yes.
beautiful, but it's also it comes with a lot of good heft of responsibility, you know.
Hmm.
Um, but like also like you don't it doesn't mean all have to be perfect, you know. It's actually also I would think when I used to teach more like full time. Right now I'm substituting.
Okay.
But it's like it's important to um show your wrinkles, I think, or to admit when you don't know. Um,
Yeah.
I'm gonna check that out when I get home, or admit when you make a mistake. So that they can make mistakes, so that
Yeah.
not obviously not intentionally, but not if they do, when they do, realize that is what it means to be human. And It's just sometimes when I first started teaching at modern day school, I wanted to teach like some of these older teachers that taught me. I want to be like, Kevin Giblin, or I wanted to teach like Joe David. And then it didn't take me long. I guess I was precocious enough, or I knew enough, I guess, or something. The universe spoke to me. That's like, hey, it's not working. You
Mm.
have to be yourself,
Yeah.
because especially kids will sniff you out if you're not
Yeah.
real and authentic with fifth graders, sixth graders, seventh graders. You can only get
Yeah.
away with so much trying to be, you know. So I'm like, that's actually, that's relief. That's a relief. It's just kind of
Yeah.
be me and trust the process and have faith in the thing that that God's put me in the classroom as a vocation idea. and it did turn out. I mean, I really like. I think I will always be in some sort of educational sort of form with the with kids and all. So, thank you, God, for letting me just taking that burden off of me of trying to be somebody else. No, I'm just gonna be me,
Yeah,
and I happen to be in the right environment, in the right arena. You know, it's one thing
mhm,
if like I'm in the financial thing that probably wouldn't have worked. So I'm
right.
thankful that number one, he put me in the right arena, but number two, he woke me up, just like, hey, just be Billy Garish, and
Yeah,
it's gonna be a lot more. It's gonna be a lot more fun. It's gonna work better.
absolutely. And even just very humbly recognizing that God put something in you that those kids need.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
if you try to be somebody else or you squelch that down, they're not going to get it. So how else
Hmm.
can they get it without you being who God made you to be? And
Yeah.
so just like just living into that, right?
Hmm.
And being yourself. And I'm sure, and I've seen, what you shared on social media. I know the kids respond to you so
Thank you.
amazingly. And so
Thank you.
I'm glad kudos to you for discovering that
Appreciate you saying that. Yeah.
and having the courage to do that. Everybody doesn't have the courage a lot of people are out here performing because
Yeah.
they think that's what they have to do to succeed or be impactful, as opposed to, of course, you incorporate from different teachers and different people who impact your life and your parents, etc. But ultimately, you have to just do it in your own way, your
Yeah.
own style.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if like how you've sort of described your kind of journey, um, you have to understanding. I'll take me for example. We'll stick with me for the moment. So like I understand like, all right, God has given me this ability to try to get through to kids, you know.
Mhm.
But then it's like, how exactly do I do that? And how
Right.
exactly is
Yeah.
that done to bring in a paycheck, you know, so I can,
Right.
pay rent
Yeah.
and pay for food and such.
Yes.
That's been something that I've been just marinating on, praying about that sort of thing. How to best put, I kind of, I'm like 95% there. I just need to know that, just totally like sort of like to coalesce the thing into one way or maybe more than one, who knows what, but the correct way to put my talents to work with respect to kids. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's teaching
Mhm.
again full time, whether it's I'm at Washington Trinity University right now, getting a degree in counseling.
Okay. Awesome.
That seems to be right now, knock on wood. But that yeah, if that everything goes well there, my sort of my long range sort of plan is to be in
Mhm.
school counseling, you know. But it's been like you said, it's been a detour. It's been a trip trying to
Mm.
figure out. Like I lived at the beach, Bethany Beach, pretty much all last year, wanting to get out of the noise of DC and
Yeah.
trying to create a. I ran summer camps down there for most of the summer, and it was a lot of fun, and it was successful. And then I was like, all right, maybe I can parlay this into an aftercare thing, you know. But then like I just quickly realized what everyone was sort of like telling me. It's like there's not much going on down there after Columbus Day. It's pretty quiet. I mean, there are kids,
Yeah.
certainly there are kids in their schools and such like that, but like I don't know, it's hard. It was hard to kind of as an outsider to like offer this service that like yeah I ran a camp, but it was tough. It was a tough slog, and also just being away from my contacts, people, and everything, around here in DC.
Yeah.
So then I had sort of like a revelation or something. So I need to get back to DC. I need to examine this degree that I'm pursuing in counseling. I reconnected with an old girlfriend of mine. There's a lot like a confluence of different things that sort of like um, sort of yeah pointed me back to this area now and then it was sort of it was like the primordial soup, and then
Yeah.
now it's finally like sort of like kind of coming together, which is nice. Thank you.
It is nice. It is nice when you feel like you have some momentum and some rhythm and things
Yeah,
are falling into place. It's a good feeling.
yeah. And then yeah, and 25 has been a good year, knock on wood, so far.
So
All right.
I wanted to ask you.
Yes,
We haven't really
sir.
had I know we bumped into each other like I feel like at a happy hour like 8 or 10 years ago in DC. I
Probably.
remember. I wanted to ask you like what do you remember from that? I don't know if we haven't told your listeners our connection. Obviously, I was
Yeah.
a senior, you were a freshman. Like people may be wondering how the heck do we even know each other? But we
Yeah.
spent. I was from what I was told, I was the first student to ever be an assistant coach on a sports team at Prep. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was assistant coach on the freshman basketball team, and you were the
Holy shit.
starting center on.
That's
I
right.
just want to ask, like, that's almost 30 years ago. Like, what stands out in your mind from that season? What do you remember generally? Like, what stands out to you?
With Coach Jones and Coach Fugett.
Yeah. Coach, you got yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
that was like one of the most memorable athletic things that I've ever been a part of that season.
Likewise,
Yeah,
likewise.
yeah, like it was magical,
Yeah, we went
very
20-0
magical.
for your listeners. I won't bury that we were undefeated.
We won 20. Yeah,
Yeah,
we won 20. Beat everyone in the city pretty much, and it
yeah.
never put.
DeMatha wouldn't play us. We
Oh,
beat Gonzaga.
oh,
We beat St. John's, and DeMatha
yeah,
wouldn't play us apparently. So
yeah. That's what we're sticking with right there.
yeah,
Um,
okay. That's what we're
yeah,
sticking with. Yeah.
yeah. A, but that was the most fun I've ever had probably playing athletics.
Yeah.
I went on.
Yeah.
I mean, that was my last year I played basketball.
Okay.
I don't I don't do regrets, but if I did, maybe I wish I could have kept playing a little more basketball. But and then I played football, lacrosse, went and played lacrosse in college. The only reason why I'm
Yeah.
saying this is because that was the most fun of all the things that I've done, athletically
Yeah.
was playing on that basketball team, that group of
Yeah.
guys and with the
Yeah.
coaches, and
Yeah.
then
We
ever
had a lot
since
of fun.
then,
We had a lot of
ever,
fun that year.
amen, brother. And ever since then,
Yeah.
Jeff Jones was a very important person to me, and
Yeah.
my father was a big
Mm.
supporter. And what kind of funny story. And then that was like, so Jeff Jones started like, I don't know, like building and grounds or something like that, I think
Yeah.
at Pratt.
He was like head of auxiliary services, which is like dining hall, buildings and yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And then it
grounds
just like
team. Yeah.
he started getting these other positions and just kind of like
Yeah.
rose up the ranks and all the way up to like president, I think.
He was president briefly.
And they
Yes.
get interim president when they were trying to find
Yep.
somebody else or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, but
The
he and
only
my
non-Jesuit to be president
yeah,
to this day of
yeah,
Prep. Yep.
yeah. There's
Yeah.
pictures up on the wall with all the
It
rest of the
is.
presidents, like
I was there when
Father
that
Roach and
night
all.
they did that. I went to the event. I think
Very
it was
cool.
2018, 2019. Yeah, it was a nice event.
Very cool. But my dad and Coach Jones were pretty close. And he's like
Cool.
one time like he was just on campus and he's like, Mr. Garish, we have a need for something and kind of important. He's like, my dad's like, yeah, sure. What is it? Anything you want, Coach. He's like, we need a cappuccino machine for the dean's office. I was like, a cappuccino machine. All right. He's like, my dad's like, I can get behind that. But he's like, how about I'll bring cappuccinos. I don't know about we're getting a cappuccino machine, not quite yet. But he was a
It sounds like him.
he was a cool dude. He was a cool dude.
Yeah. Well, he's
Uh,
missed. He's definitely
yeah,
missed.
bro, gone too soon, homie.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely.
so
That's cool.
how is the season quotes? I like how you use seasons. When I was listening to that podcast, you're like, yeah, I slept walk for a season. I was like, all right. Um, you're not still sleepwalking, are you?
No,
Yeah.
I'm not.
How did that
My
come
oldest
about?
daughter does sometimes, and I'll tell her
Really
about it in the morning. We'll have a laugh, but
interesting.
no,
Interesting.
I think I was 6 years old, and for a while,
Yeah.
my parents had divorced. I think it was a lot of stress. I think I was at a period where I slept walk. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah,
How's this season for you treating? Seems to me that things are going well. It's kind of exciting. You're kind of you're ramping up this. You get ready to fire up the podcast again, correct?
yeah. Correct. Fire.
Progress podcast.
I might record something today. I'm sitting here, feeling
Amen,
good.
brother. Amen.
My wife wants to help fix my background, but I told her, I said, well, Billy just complimented me on it. So she's like, I
What
want to
took
put some different books back here and stuff. And of course, I got me and
Obama?
President Obama I met
Yeah,
him in 2015, which is amazing. Got this picture, so that's pretty cool.
it
So,
is amazing.
my wife said, you put that on there. I said, all right, I put that up. Why not?
That's
So
great.
anyway,
It's great.
but yeah, bringing the podcast
What's right behind you that written on that whiteboard, or I don't know if that's a sign or a picture of
back.
some
The
sort.
best is yet to come, and then it
Oh,
says
yeah.
progress, not
Progress, not
perfection.
perfection. And then
My wife's mantra.
yeah,
Progress podcast, and of
keep
course,
moving.
yeah, and also, for those of you who are biblical scholars, First Timothy 4:11 through 16 talks about being a witness through to Christ and living in a way that others may make see your progress and want to make progress with you, right?
Yeah,
And in making progress in your own life, you'll be saving yourself and others, right, by modeling progress. And so, my wife and I were praying, and that's the word progress came to us. We felt rooted in that Bible verse to let our light shine, so to speak. And that's what the podcast is about. And that's what we're doing through our coaching as well, is to let others see our progress. We've overcome addiction, we've overcome financial challenges, we overcome other health challenges in our marriage, and my wife was divorced previously. So we've lived a lot in marriage. We've lived a lot, even in various seasons in our church life. Both of us. I was raised Catholic. She grew up in church, which has her own story there, and then of course, in the marketplace, in business and professionally, we both have a story. And so
Hmm.
together we really think we have a lot that we can offer. We believe we have a lot we can offer because God's brought us through. It has not been easy, and it's still not easy, but
Hmm.
God brings us through. To your question, right now, I would say, I talked to one of my good accountability partners and friends. He says you're in process right now, and that's what I would say. I'm in process. There's some interesting things are percolating so far this year, and that kind of come out of the blue. Some very unique opportunities, and so I'm just walking it out day by day, and trusting God for the outcome, right?
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. I don't know where all this is going to lead, but I know I'm called to be a communicator. I'm called to share, like I did on that kind of podcast ramble, just to get back in the flow.
Yeah.
And I'm also called to be a unique resource and trusted advisor in the marketplace. And some people have identified me and seen me in that light, and some interesting things are happening. And again, I don't know where they'll lead, and so we'll see. So stay tuned. All that to say, but I would say right
Yeah.
now, very much in process.
Yeah. It's a good feeling. I mean, I'm a, I tend to be like a feeling guy. But feelings are, God,
Likewise.
they're hard. But you got to remind yourself to keep, I always say, like, keep reading the tea leaves, keep looking for the
Mhm.
signs. You don't need to invent signs necessarily, but like, you know, um, be open to signs and feelings. And it's a good feeling when you have that, about like you're in process, in process, you just, I don't
Yeah.
know, it's just, I don't want to jinx it, but I don't know, I got a good feeling, like it's, you start getting out of bed a little earlier, or you start popping out of bed,
Yeah,
you start, like, getting up with a purpose, that might have
exactly.
not been there, a few months back or whatever it might, it's funny how things just like come in and come out of your life, and what you do with that, that's good to hear. So what do you find yourself like right now? You have a lot of stuff. It's a beautiful thing, like you have a kind of a handful, not, yeah, you have a few things going on, but they all kind of have this undercurrent of like, of communication, of helping, of consulting, stewardship. What do you find yourself maybe now, ish, focusing most of your time on, like, in a work day,
Yeah. I think right now, kind of pivoting to doing what we're doing right now, which is talking, right? Definitely, I think, it sounds very technical in this day and age, or, maybe even, boring or a given
Yeah.
for certain people, but producing content, right?
Yeah.
So I think some of my biggest challenges, and I'm 45, I'll be 46 later this year. I'm kind of on the older end of folks who came of age with social media and the internet. So it's not a reflex for me to pull out my phone and record myself necessarily. Like
Hmm.
I grew up around radio. My
Hmm.
uncle owned the first radio station to play reggae in the Caribbean. And I remember
Hmm.
I was like 4 years old playing around in that studio down in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands, right? So radio was cool. And, I remember still having like a regular camera and taking film to drop off at People's Drugstore here in DC to get the film developed.
People's
I mean,
drug, I remember.
yeah, yeah. So now it's a whole different game. And so, what I really feel compelled to do, and through my faith, is to have the courage to just speak
Mhm.
and to be able to connect with other men and other families. And that's what the Progress Podcast is about. But even on my platform, to be able to do it, more consistently, a little, Progress Podcast, we had amazing production quality. I think for what I'm doing is going to be more, nuts and bolts conversations for men in particular. And so really, that's what I'm focusing on. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm also producing a course. I'm the son of a federal worker, retired. My late uncle was a federal worker in Navy, And so I have other family members who have worked for the federal government. And so I certainly have a lot of empathy for right now for what's happening in terms of people who are losing their jobs in short order. And so
Yeah.
again, I've been doing so much work in workforce in that space. I'm pulling together a asynchronous course and also launching a community called Fed to Future. And so,
Yeah.
if anybody, go to at Russell Fugett or at My Progress Coach on Instagram. We're also on TikTok. Also, I'm on. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. Send me a DM. I'll put you on the wait list for it. And I'm working to get that course out by the middle of March 2025, which is 2 weeks from now. And so, that's what I'm focusing on is content. So producing that course, and then a lot of it will be marketing and being an ambassador and being a resource, both to the men who are part of Joesph coaching, and of course to our federal workers or former federal workers who are looking for a career pivot. So again, I don't know what the future holds. One thing about more or less, being an independent entrepreneur for the last 15 years, every day is different, every week is different. And so, right now, certainly living a lot by faith and with a direction, but I can't, I'm not necessarily living towards a certain outcome, by a certain date. But
Hmm.
again, putting my best foot forward day by day,
Hmm.
climbing that mountain, so to speak, as we were saying
Hmm.
earlier in this conversation. That's really my focus right now is to get out to the marketplace, what I believe God's put inside of me to be a blessing and to serve others at the highest level. And so that requires me speaking and, posting and recording podcasts, but
Hmm.
also producing the content as well that will hopefully be impactful and change people's lives and careers. And so that's
Yes,
the work
sir.
really for this month and going forward for the foreseeable future. And again, I have some other unique opportunities as well that I'm working on a workforce development opportunity that would be significant out in Hagerstown, Maryland. And that's been approved by the Hagerstown City Council and the former and current mayor have both approved the project, which would create a workforce training center and create a lot of jobs and opportunity for people both through the public school system, which is on board with the curriculum that my partners have, and also through people who are returning from jail and prison. There's 3 prisons out in Washington County in Western Maryland. And so just creating opportunity, so being a bridge, being a light, being a unique resource and a trusted advisor where I can. And so, I know one thing my wife and I talk about, and I've had a lot of clarity in my prayer time, is that God said that a lot of things that I do won't always seem to make sense or like fit from a worldly standpoint or be a linear progression, but it will make sense to me and it'll work well for me. And so, everything I've just described can sound very different and unique, marriage, ministry, and marketplace, but it works for me, and it, allows God to move through me to be a blessing and to make opportunity and impact and change for other people. And
Yeah.
so that's it right now. So again,
Yeah.
I
That's
can
enough. That's
stay
enough.
tuned.
That's a
Yeah,
lot.
it's,
Yeah.
it's yeah, and I'm a husband and father, so yeah, but that's it. So stay tuned, right? But
Yeah.
that's the journey I'm
Yes,
on, and
sir.
it's truly a faith journey,
Mhm.
and has been for the last couple of years in our finances, but God's provided, and it has been in our health, and it has been in our marriage, and so it
Yeah.
has been in our careers. My wife lost her job, but now she's running a 4 location dental practice here in Maryland, and so that's really how we're living by faith, not by sight.
Yeah. Um, the yeah, that's a good way to put it. Faith not by sight.
Mhm.
Um, so fed to future. I mean, it is an unfortunate reality that a lot of people have lost their jobs. Federal
Yeah,
workers, government workers.
yeah,
Um, however, in this, when there's like something bad happens, there you try to find the silver lining, and there's opportunity there that
exactly.
you're noticed to help.
Yeah.
And so the Fed to Future sort of course that you're creating, is it how are you doing that? Is it going to be an online thing? Is it going to
Yeah,
be
it's gonna be on. It's gonna be an online asynchronous course. So there'll
ace?
be. I
Okay,
think right now I have like yes, it's gonna be 7 modules, and each module will have
yeah,
2 or 3 lessons.
got it.
There'll be some. Yeah, there'll be some. Each module will have a video. Most of the modules will have a corresponding worksheet or handout. So it's gonna be asynchronous course. So you could crush it all in a day. You could do it, one day at a time, right? You could come back to it, and then I'm also gonna launch a weekly group coaching call as well. And so, and then of course, if people would need one-on-one support, if people want support for their resume development, I'm going to be able to offer that too. And I know other people who do that work in that space. If it gets to be a level where it's more than I can handle, which would be
Hmm.
amazing success. And have other people I can pull in to support that process as well. And so, but right now I'm working on getting the course recorded. I have some recordings I've done previously, but I'm going to step it up and improve the quality and kind of tweak what I've done previously to make it a little more applicable to the federal workforce and to speak directly to this specific audience, right, of people who have lost and will continue, from what I understand, for at least the next 6 months, to continue to be transitioned, or terminated from federal employment, who need to move forward. And so, obviously, here in Maryland, I've seen, I think, in DC or Virginia, other municipalities and states are creating resources to help transition laid off and terminated federal workers to new opportunities. So, hoping to be able to kind of gather a lot of that information and be able to be a resource to share that out as well, and help people, not get isolated and stuck and afraid, right? And I think that's the thing. Having gone through, having lived through, how do I pay my mortgage? Having lived through, how do I keep my kids in their school? To go to a nice private school, having lived through, how do I pay for these bills, right? I understand, as again, also being the son of a former federal employee, I understand, right, how you have it. When you get a federal job, it's usually, if you do your job, you can be there for life, right? You can work that for a long time. It's the federal government. It's not going to go out of business, so to speak, right? And
Right,
so,
right, right.
I think a lot of people who are career public servants, who intended to be or who have been, I can imagine how jarring this time can be. And so, to offer a course, like someone who maybe never created a LinkedIn page, someone who never really had to do a resume or hasn't to do a resume in over a decade, a lot of things have changed in the job market in terms of
Hmm.
finding jobs, online applications, remote work, et cetera. So I think there's a lot that I have to offer in that standpoint, but then also being able to have a community people can plug into on a weekly basis on a group coaching call, to people can share resources, people can just get encouragement, right? That's one of my gifts, is encouragement. And if they need to plug in directly with me or someone else, they can do that too. And we're going to do our best to make everything as affordable as possible, being very sensitive to the fact of people who are in economic or financial stress, that want to be able to hold that tension well, of not feeling like I'm charging people too much. And I've certainly have prayed about, how do I structure this in a way where it can be accessible and available to as many people as possible. And so,
Yeah.
we'll see. It's a faith walk, but I put it out on LinkedIn and Instagram last week with a couple posts, and already people were texting me over the weekend. Yeah, I think you even made a comment or shared about or said something about it to me. Obviously, you're asking about it now, and so
Yeah.
I'm really encouraged that people are like, yeah, it's a blatant, clear opportunity, and I'm blessed to have access to a curriculum that I've delivered a number of times before, to be and have permission now through the partnership to kind of customize it and tweak it, and then I'm going to get re-record it with this beautiful background and setting, and hope to be able to help people get some understanding as to what they need to do to reposition themselves in the marketplace, but then also have a community they can plug into, group coaching. I definitely have some experts I can pull on to be guests and share. And so, I have a wonderful network of people, and so I'm hoping to leverage that to, again, bring it, build it, and make it available, to as many people as possible who want to plug in and be a part of a community, to, again, share resources and get a path to get back from Fed to the future. And their future, will be hopefully be better opportunities and better days for
Yeah.
all these talented people who are now losing their jobs.
Yeah. It's hopefully they're kind of like maybe like your wife who lost her job and now she runs
Yeah,
like helps facilitate for like
yeah,
dental offices or whatever.
yeah. I've
Seems
been laid
like
off twice. I've been
yeah,
laid off twice.
there you
So,
go. That's
yeah,
that's the experience that you bring, you know.
yeah. My wife's been laid
So
off. I've been laid off. So, again, I get it. It's I feel it. I know what it feels like. And so hopefully we just can be a light in the darkness for a lot of
yeah,
people, and that's my heart's desire, is to be able to do that, and help some folks be able to figure out their transition.
yeah. And I think using your network, excuse me, to create a network for
Yeah.
these folks to plug into,
Yep.
like like we've kind of been talking about, like communities so hugely important,
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
you don't even realize, I don't think, what can happen once you put yourself around other people. Sometimes like I
Exactly.
sometimes I stew Sometimes I can be a loner, try to figure things out in my own head on my own, but it's God, it's hard, it's different. It's a lot. It's difficult. It's a lot more doable when you have other people, and especially maybe if those other people are in a similar circumstance or there's a theme there that's connecting all these people. It's like, hey, as a village, maybe we can come together and figure this thing out, and everyone can lift everyone sort of up,
Yeah.
and motivate them and get them in the right sort of mind space. I mean, yeah, you need practical sort of steps with
Yeah.
resume,
Strategies,
and
tools,
you need
resources.
you
Yeah.
need that, but you also
Yeah.
need, but before that, in order for that to work, the fuel for that is the mental piece, to
Yeah.
understand that there's a door out there that's a better door than the one you just left that's shut on your face, you know. And it's
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
the belief in that, to engender that inspiration and motivation, and then, all right, you got it, you understand it, good, now here are the tools, you know,
Yeah.
to
Exactly.
in order to get to the door, to find the door, you know.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. Just
Yeah.
not don't stay at home. And you've dealt with a good amount of depression and mental health and anxiety and such like that. Um, the I oftentimes have people that I talk to, like, not doing well or whatever it might be. I'm like, can you just get outside and go for a walk? You know, and
Yeah. Right.
sometimes even that's difficult, but
Yeah.
if
I've
you can
been there.
just, yeah, yeah, I can believe it. You
Yeah.
know, so kind of saying,
Yeah. It's
but
easy to sit in the dark and
uh,
just turn the TV on or just stare off into
yeah,
space.
yeah. Or
Yeah.
just
Like
like get
why?
out, just go for a drive or something. You know,
Mm-hmm.
just even sometimes,
Yeah.
like,
Move.
my schedule's a little bit all over the place right now. But and
Yeah.
I find myself sometimes being inside my house for a while, and I literally step outside and I'm like, whoa, that's so much better out here.
Mhm.
You know, to get outside your walls and outside your roof and underneath the God's sky, you know, God's dome to an extent,
Yeah.
you know.
Right. Touch
There's so
grass. They say
much.
touch grass.
That's grass, homie. Like, there's so much power about being outside. Anyway, I'm kind of getting a little bit off
No, I love it. You're
total
right.
topic, but like,
No,
what you're doing
important
is,
for our mental health.
amen, amen. But
Yeah.
what you're doing is wonderful.
Thank
To
you.
like sort of like kind of light a fire and provide a smile, but also behind your smile is a lot of, like, you know, tough stuff that you bring, and can help
Yeah.
these folks that are now in the tough stuff spot get through
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
you know. So it's
Yeah.
exciting. It's a very exciting, you know, because, like, yeah, you have background in this sort of stuff, but it's a whole it's not a different animal, but it is a different animal, you know.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you're creating this, it's got like the whole creation process. I love creating, writing, coming up with
Yeah.
stuff out of kind of nothing or whatever. And then you have that sort of digital background, space background that you were in, and
Yeah.
now you're creating a digital sort of course and everything like that. Seems like you're
Yeah.
very much in your wheelhouse, which is
From
awesome.
your lips to God's ears. And from your lip. But thank you. This is encouraging me. And
Yeah,
again, the messages I got over the weekend, people again who texted me, a couple people messaged me, somebody
yeah,
commented who I hadn't heard from a long time. This is great, Russell. Good luck. Like,
yeah.
I'm like, okay, like I'm on to something here, I'm on to
You
something.
kind of need to hear that, especially if you're working for yourself. You know, you said it. It's
Exactly.
hard to stay
Exactly.
motivated. It's hard to stay disciplined. It's hard to stay on schedule.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep track of all these irons you have in the fire.
Mhm.
And then you got two kids, and one might be sick now, and you know, and you got your
Yeah.
wife. You want a happy wife, happy life, all that sort of stuff.
Yes, very true.
So, yeah, you're doing good.
Yeah.
You're doing good. It's hard to keep your head screwed on straight. You know.
Well,
Um,
again, that's why I say, going back to Joesph coaching, we need accountability,
mhm.
and that can happen one on one, but also it happens in community. And so, like I said, I've told the world I'm doing this. There's like,
Yeah,
of course, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, so I have like three other ideas that are out here I could pursue. But I'm like, no, I'm recording this content. I'm gonna get this course uploaded and everything ready to go, and then I'm just gonna start putting it out there to the world and knowing that I can impact some lives and not get distracted, right? And that's the challenge. So
yeah. Put it out there. See who
encouragement
salutes.
helps me avoid distraction.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so this stuff that you're recording online, I guess this is the studio. I'm looking at it right now. Is this how you're
Yeah,
doing
I
it?
might get my wife has some opinions on how to tinker with the background and what angle I should use, but this is pretty much going to be
I
it.
like
And
it.
I have this table here, and because I've delivered this content before, I'm gonna have some notes, but I'm not gonna need a script. It's gonna be really natural, and I'm gonna share my screen and his worksheets and different things. I'm gonna show people and walk through, how the process of the job search, the process of mindset. We really start with a lot of it around mindset. 4 questions. There's 4 key questions. Kind of a personal branding exercise, and then we get into resumes and cover letters and job search, how to avoid scams. Right, there's a lot of job search scams right now, and the last thing I want to see is a former federal employee who's desperate, who's applying, get scammed, and it's happening. A lot of people who aren't, again, if you haven't looked for a job in the last 10 years, there's a lot. The landscape has shifted quite dramatically, and so again, I want to create a course as a resource to a lot of people, and so I'm excited to look at this camera and encourage people, but then also give them some strategies and tactics and awareness and
Yeah.
knowledge they can use on their next to find their next career opportunity, to people so people can sustain themselves and their families and the communities. And obviously, it's having a huge impact here in this region in Maryland. But I know 85% of federal workers don't live in the DMV. They live elsewhere in America, and so I know there's a lot of communities right now who are feeling the impacts of these changes. And so hopefully this course can be a light and this community can be a resource and an encouragement for people. We don't want to see people commit suicide. We don't want to see people lose their homes, right? And you fear some of that. We're going to start hearing those stories soon. My wife and I have
Yeah.
talked about that in recent days. And so, hopefully this
Yeah.
course can change the trajectory of one life. It's going to be worth it.
It's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting. Funny, funny is probably not the right word, but it's curious that like right around now, how many years ago was it when COVID happened? 2020, 5 years
Yeah,
ago,
5
5
now.
years.
Yeah, it'll be five
Um,
years this month. Yeah.
yeah. It's a similar sort of reorganization, like in the beginning,
Mm,
it's almost like how you process trauma or something like that. In
that's
the beginning,
profound.
you're kind of shocked, and then
Right.
you're angry, and then like at some point you gotta like, all right, let's reorganize. COVID was crappy, obviously, but like it allowed people to sort of, some people were in a job and they just, and it allowed them to leave their job. They allowed them to tap back into the re-examine who they are and what their real passions are. So I mean,
Yeah.
for some people, it was a boon in a good way. It allowed them to
Yeah.
like find start a new chapter. So
Right.
hopefully that can be for the folks that you're working with a similar sort of idea. What on the surface, which is it seems like a blatant negative, but maybe at the end of the day, and after some coaching and some perspective, and God
Yeah.
willing, like they find another job. They get, at the end of the day, you got to pay your bills, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
hopefully they can find something else that they might enjoy a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. That's the
uh,
hope. And I
that's
know
the
it's
hope.
out there for a lot for all of
Yeah,
them. It's out there. It is.
yeah, yeah,
There's over 5 million jobs posted on LinkedIn. People may have to get upskilled. People may have to get new certifications and new training, but there's a future. There's a place for everyone. I believe that
yeah.
we're blessed to be in a great economy and a great country, in spite of what's happening. And so there's opportunity.
Yeah,
We
it's
just
like
gotta
sometimes like it's hard. It's sometimes it's the I think the one of the more important things to do is to realize that you don't have to do it all on your own, and
exactly.
you can almost admit that you need help. It's kind of like going to therapy. It's like just because you're going to therapy doesn't mean you're broken necessarily.
No.
It's just
Yeah.
like you want to talk stuff out and you want to like make yourself even better, improve on certain aspects of your life. So it's like to just admit the fact, come to Coach Fugett or whatever it is to consult somebody to help hold your hand a little bit
Yeah.
into the direction that people need to kind of go in order to affect hopefully a really good end. But it's hard to do
Yeah.
things on your own. It's hard to do things on your own, flat.
And yeah. Yeah. It is. And I don't
Um,
want to. Yeah. So isolation. You
yeah, it's
can't do
not.
it. Can't do it in isolation.
Yeah, there's a reason why God put Adam and then he made Eve in the garden.
There you go.
You don't want to be
There
all
you go.
Adam. Don't leave men alone too long. Bad things will happen.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, God do better than that in his
yes, sir.
wisdom, his infinite wisdom. So yeah.
Amen, brother. Yeah. I'm gonna like kind of let you go and get to work on your
Thank you.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, I
I love
appreciate it.
rapping. I love talking, but like at some point
I've
it's like, all
enjoyed
right, let's
this.
go to work. Yeah, amen. Same here. It's cool reconnecting over just like this podcast, but hope to see you in person soon.
Yeah. We'll love to do that,
Let's stay
especially as the
connected.
warmer weather starts to hit. And
Let's
let's
stay connected.
definitely
Yeah,
stay connected. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. If you got any ideas for me, throw them my way, or if you need, if I can help you with your mission, let me know.
No, likewise. I'd love to hear about how what you're doing with the kids and summer
Yeah,
camps, and
yeah,
we can go through this counseling degree. Let's stay connected. Maybe there's some people we can help and serve together to make an impact.
I
That'd be
like that a
beautiful.
lot. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, brother. Where can they find some of your stuff? I mean, Instagram for sure, right?
Yeah, at Russell Fugett with two S's, two L's, Fuggett. I'm very easy to find. Instagram and then LinkedIn are probably where I am the most.
Yeah,
I check my Facebook every now and again.
yeah.
And then myprogresscoach.com is the website. Again, when the coaching, this pro coaching, when this course goes live, you'll be able to get a link to it there as well. But the Joesph coaching link is there if anybody wants to, any men who are listening want to apply for
That's
that.
right. Yep.
Anybody needs, they're looking for marriage coach. We have an assessment and a 1 hour coaching call. It's kind of our entry point. We'll do a assessment tool that we use, and then it's like an extended survey, and it gives a very detailed report, and then we'll do a 1 hour call to go over it and discuss next steps. But it can be really insightful whether you're soon to be engaged, or in your marriage and having some challenges and not connecting. My wife and I are available to serve you. So myprogresscoach.com.
I might be calling. I got so I reconnected with this girl, Debbie. We were engaged at one point.
Okay.
At the end of the pandemic, she has kids. And it
Mm-hmm.
just kind of became I wasn't at the right spot in my life at then, and
Yeah.
she had some things she needed to work through, so we split, and now we're back together,
Okay.
which is a beautiful thing. Because
That
we
is.
got together in the beginning because of some real love there. There was real something there, and we got engaged and
Good.
everything, but just sort of I don't think either of us were mature enough to go forward with it.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll be calling you and your wife, and maybe we can
Yeah.
all have a
That,
talk.
you know where to find me, brother. I'm here
Yes,
for you.
sir. Yes, sir. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Well,
All right,
thanks for making this
Joseph
space for me.
Russell,
Thanks for this invitation.
you're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
Look forward to it.
I'm excited for you. I'll be following.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
All right, buddy. See you
All
soon.
right. Take care.
All
All
right, bye
right.
bye.